3 inches of ice on that fat wing. So we're going to turn the clock back about 50 years in my first owned airplane. So I'll tell you about the airplane first. It was a 1965 Cherokee 180C. This was, she was 6 years old, 2,000 hours on the airframe, been a flight school trainer, and that's why she gave her so many hours in a short period of time. My partner and I bought the airplane for something like $10,300, including a top engine overhaul. Loved it. She was a little minus in equipment, though. 1 vacuum pump, driving all the gyro instruments, no electric backup on the turn and bank indicator. So a little antiquated in that regard. Transponders were just a luxury at the time. And she had no pitot heat. So icing would have been a consideration because that big fat Hershey bar wing of that machine you'd stayed out of ice, that's for sure. Well, this is in Des Moines, so you had to be careful. Private in December, an instrument reading in May, a commercial in June or July, the multi-engine in September, and it got to be to the point where I said, I think I can do one more. Hey, up in Minnesota, there exists a seaplane, a single-engine seaplane, and they would give me training there. Well, it was mid to late October. Grand Rapids, Minnesota is north of Duluth, but it was within 385 miles of Des Moines. So I said, let's do this. They had spot. I went up. I was going to make the travel up there and do that. They had a beautiful Citabria 7 GCBC on Edo floats, and I loved it. It was fun. So we load up the Cherokee by myself, head on down the road, got to stop for gas someplace. So Class B airspace didn't exist yet. The TCAs, terminal control areas, didn't really exist yet at the time. So transponder-less flying was okay, and obviously decades before ADS-B. So I make my way up towards Grand Rapids, but I went to the west side of the Minneapolis-St. Paul vicinity. So we're headed out there, and quite frankly, the weather was good ceilings, good visibility, no problem. Chilly, no doubt about it. I remember that for sure. And we're headed up, the royal we, headed up the road. Everything's working fine. The Cherokee's just doing fabulous at a whopping 120 miles an hour, 129 perhaps, if memory serves. And I get up there, a beam just northwest of the Minneapolis-St. Paul vicinity, and I run into unforecast freezing rain. I have absolutely no pitot heat. I don't have anything electrical windshield. All I have is bleed air from the engine muff to be able to do this. I turn on everything and try to get out of this. I can't see where it's coming from. I can't see the edge of it. It just all of a sudden started to happen. It wasn't like I could see a rain shower and avoid it. It just came out of the clouds. And I talked to flight service the whole time up there. Nope, no problem. Well, it was a problem because in a very short period of time, my windshield was nothing but opaque. Shortly after I lost my forward vision, I could see out the sides of the airplanes, no problem. Shortly after the run-in with that, I lost my airspeed indicator. It went to 0 because once the front end of the pitot tube got iced over, it had nothing to compare it to. So I had no airspeed indication whatsoever. I knew how high I was. I could see out the side windows, but I couldn't see anything forward. And so I had to sort of like a tail dragger does, I had to make S turns to be sure that I was on track to be able to go to someplace to land. Well, the place that I was actually gunning for and going to land was St. Cloud. St. Cloud, Minnesota is about 50 miles to the northwest of the cities. And I was going to land there anyway. Now, they've got a tower now, but they didn't there. And I also noticed it had a 7,500-foot runway. So I was starting to think, what on earth can I do to recover from this? I had been a student of the flying magazines and AOPA and the columns about what to do, or here I was and what to do. I came up with a relative solution. Thank God the Cherokee had a window that you could open up on the side, and so I was hugging the windshield with one bare hand. And in those days, we didn't have a headset. So I'm talking on I'm doing a radio call with a microphone over here, got the left hand over here, got the extra noise level of that with an overhead speaker and no headset. So, but at least it was working a little bit. Okay, so I'm headed to St. Cloud, but now what I'm going to do, because I don't have any airspeed indicator. At least I had practiced some power pitch things, and I could actually hear the engine, unlike the A&R headsets today. So you can tell if it's speeding up or slowing down. I could tell by the wind noise and that kind of stuff roughly that we weren't going to fall out of the sky. But I didn't want to make that mistake low over the runway. So it came in, straight in, thank you very kindly. It was a Sunday, if I remember correctly, no traffic whatsoever, straight into the 7,500-foot runway. And what I think is a reasonable approach speed. Well, I floated for about 5,000 feet of that 7,500-foot runway, but that's okay because I didn't want to fall the 3 or 4 feet above the runway until it was time to quit to land. Well, I didn't worry about anything else, didn't look outside. I was just happy to do that because I was with this handheld window and just trying to make it, and the brakes worked okay, and there wasn't an accumulation or anything on the ground there. It was just that local pocket of freezing rain. So I clean my shorts, park the airplane, sit in the airplane for a moment, and the temperature is warmer there because I'm down on the ground. So the temperature's 45, and things start immediately thawing at least a little bit. I walk into the FBO. It wasn't very well attended. And there's a guy inside that I recognize. And I had to take a double or triple take on that. It's Hubert Humphrey, former Vice President of the United States. He doesn't have any detail because the Vice Presidents don't get that post office. He was there by himself. Evidently, he had some aviation background and information because he was living in Waverly, which wasn't too far away. And I got inside, he watched me inside and the whole thing, and I said hello, and finally he was looking outside and the whole thing. Well, he noticed, he said, "That's a lot of ice on that airplane, kid." And I said, I can't agree with you anymore, sir, unintentional. Went out there and measured it. We had 3 inches of ice on that fat wing. It was one of the most embarrassing times of my life, but it's one of the things that I didn't plan on. I really couldn't avoid it, except having not flown at all. I didn't get into trouble by breaking any rules. It was just one of those God-given things that happens, and you're lucky to walk away. There's story number 1 as far as walking away. There were others that we can perhaps cover at other times. But after 52 years, that's one that's sort of kind of memorable because it was early on in my education, and I have to give credit to reading and trying to say, what would I do if something like this occurred? Where would I go? How could I perhaps recover from this and still fly the airplane another day?